Hello, my name's Tony Dell and this is my lived experience with PTSD. I was born a POM in 1945 and I came to Australia with my family when I was just 14. 5 years later I had designs to play cricket for Queensland but got called up for the National Service in 1965. I spent 2 years in the Army, which included almost 12 months in Vietnam with 2 RAR. Vietnam was an adventure of sorts for a fit 21-year-old, despite a few hairy moments. But I did come home as damaged goods in 1968, as I spent the next 40 years with undiagnosed PTSD. The upside of PTSD is that you become a workaholic, which made me very good at my job in advertising production. It's the brain's way of masking the crap that's in there. I played first grade rugby and cricket and I became an associate director at work on my return. But behind the scenes I battled with bad dreams, night sweats, teeth grinding, relationship difficulties, aversion to crowds, temper outbursts, aversion to heights and being startled by loud noises, just to name a few. I guess that at times I was just a second-rate citizen. And luckily I'd always been a two-pot screamer and a very active sports person, so drugs and alcohol were never an option. I'm sure that the constant camaraderie of playing sport, training, dressing room banter and work was my therapy in those early days. I got picked to play cricket for Queensland in 1970 and eventually I played a couple of test matches with Ian Chappell as my captain during my 5-year career. I actually got to open the bowling with both Dennis Lillee and Jeff Thompson. Then one day I just told the Australian selectors that I didn't want to play anymore. This was explained to me many years later that I had feelings of guilt about leaving someone else to do my job while I swanned off playing cricket. They say it's tied to the Army mantra that the section or platoon is only as strong as its weakest member. This was always drilled into us, and I was just the weakest member at my work. So in 1975 I got married and settled into work full-time. But in 1980 I got fired. It seems that I was too hard on people who were underperforming. It works in the Army, but not in business. With PTSD you think you're fine, and it's the rest of the world that's out of step. The irony of that is that I was their highest revenue earner because of my work ethic, and I'd even given up my cricket for them. I could never work for a boss again, so I went into partnership with a previous workmate. We went from a standing start to number 4 in town in 8 years, and we won many business and creative awards along the way, with my wife Katie as the creative force. And in 1988, my 2 partners and their lawyer fired me with no real reasons. Again, I was the major revenue earner, and my wife Katie came with me. Was I still rubbing people up the wrong way? 40% of the clients followed us to the Dell partnership, and we flourished for 2 years. But then a combination of Keating's recession we had to have and a dodgy client, we lost everything. I had trusted this client implicitly. People had warned me, but loyalty is another PTSD trait. The 80s have been an absolute roller coaster of very high highs, but equally low lows. And by 1990, we had 3 children aged 9, 6 and 4. The 90s are quite blurry, with a succession of rentals, eking out a meagre living, and I eventually lost my family too. Soon, I was living by myself in my mum's garage in Caloundra, as I tried to set up a series of indoor sports centres in India with local governments, only to be finally thwarted by the GFC. What else could go wrong? Was life still worth living? Cricket saved me. but more specifically defence cricket. As I was the only Vietnam veteran to play Test cricket, I was their guest at the International Defence Cricket Challenge in Canberra in 2007. As I prepared to return home, a retired colonel insisted that I replace the medals my kids had lost as they grew up. Eventually, after a chat at the Vietnam Veterans Drop-In Centre in Maroochydore, they told me I had PTSD. They organised a psych to confirm the diagnosis, and before long I had a pension and a gold card. The card enabled me to have my right knee replaced in 2009, and then I was invited to the next IDCC in Canberra. Would I do the awards dinner speech? By then I had done a lot of research and threw in some of my own experiences. I received a standing ovation from 400 international defence cricketers and a hug from the CDF Angus Houston. Later, in early 2010, as I lay in hospital after my second knee replacement, I thought a lot about what to do next. Stan Tall was born then, but I needed much help to make it happen. I had an accumulation of about $80,000 of debt to retire, to be solvent, to be able to incorporate a charity. I had about $40,000 in fines from the ATO in unopened envelopes. That's another PTSD thing. If you don't open them, they're not there. A friendly accountant and a letter from the psychiatrist took care of that. And the Australian Cricketers Association Hardship Fund and the Kerry Packer Foundation took care of the rest. So I was solvent, and Stand Tall could happen. For a few years I experienced obstacles from DVA and the RSL, who saw me as an interloper, but I was supported by other ESOs, clinicians and Angus Houston. Luckily I wore DVA and the RSL down, and Angus Houston becoming my patron gave me legitimacy. Sadly, my wife passed away in mid-2012, but I guess the upside there was that I grew so much closer to my children. After a slow beginning, Stand Tall gradually gained some traction, and by early 2015 we became the charity attached to Tony Abbott's Prime Minister's cricket match in Canberra, thanks to Catherine McGregor. And later in 2015 we staged our first international conference with the title Seeking Solutions Together. This was our first major foray into collaboration. In 2016 we staged our first public awareness convoy of military and first responder vehicles and personnel over 11 days from Brisbane to Sydney to Canberra and then Melbourne. In 2017 we staged our second international clinical conference, and in 2018 we tied in with the Invictus Games for a second convoy. This time it was over 19 days with over 100 media interviews. With all of these events we embraced collaboration with our line Seeking Solutions Together. And to our logo we added awareness leads to knowledge, which leads to action. In 2015, Sally came back into my life and has enriched it immeasurably. Together, we are now the Stand Tall team. In early 2019, following that very busy 4 years, where we felt we had achieved a lot, we sat down with a number of other organisations, clinicians, researchers and first responders to discuss where to next. We concluded that we had to plan an event that had some really positive outcomes. Previous events were great for awareness and knowledge, but there was very little action. We had to design an event which recommended to the authorities how to improve the stagnated success rate of treatment, which would then lead to a curbing of the suicide rate. PTS-20 was born in those months in 2019, but the bushfires, COVID-19 and a lack of finite funding have led to it now becoming PTS 21 with a few postponements. We have assembled the most significant group of Australian and international experts, clinicians, researchers, academics, and people who work at the coalface with PTSD and mental trauma. They will spend time discussing, debating, and arriving at a series of recommendations for transition, suicide, and models of care. I have a vested interest in suicide also, as my young brother took his own life many years ago. I know what that does to a family. These recommendations will be irrefutable given the amazing quality of people involved. So far, this has been a 53-year journey since Vietnam, and I am positive that by the end of 2021, the past 11 years will have been well worth the effort. Look out for an updated video in January 2022. As usual, I will now leave you with my favourite creation so far, the Stand Tall song.
There's a song that says it's a wonderful world, but the sights I have seen would make your hair curl. So I keep to myself, can't share or confide, don't wanna seem weak, 'cause I got my pride. People around me just don't understand, think life should be simple and go to a plan. But the order of things is often destroyed when the forces of evil or fate are employed. I've seen it all, heading my back to the wall. Seen more wrong than right, heard screams in the night. I still see my mates fall, and the battleground now. To move on from hell, but how? To rise, not to fall, to walk, not to crawl. Rise above destiny's call. Rise, stand tall. The grinding of teeth is all that I hear through the dark of the night. The depression, the fear, anger and rage, heartache and grief. Back on the bottle to get some relief. The sound of a chopper whirring above. When you're frozen in terror, it's hard to show love. The flashbacks that take me back, am I still there? Does anyone know? Does anyone care? I've seen it all, had my back to the wall. Seen more wrong than right, heard screams in the night. Still see my mates fall, and the battleground now. To move on to hell, but how? Rise not to fall, walk not to crawl. Rise above destiny's call. Rise, stand tall. Kids run for cover and hide. No way of knowing what goes on in my mind. Gotta get back to the top of the hill. I think I can do it, I can and I will. I've seen it all, had my back to the wall. Seen more wrong than right, heard screams in the night. I still see my mates fall, in the battleground now. Oh, to move on, hell, how? Rise not to fall, walk not to crawl. Rise above destiny's call. call. Oh, to rise, not to fall, to walk, not to crawl. Rise above destiny's call. Rise, stand tall. Rise, stand tall.